Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be talking about dice games, the top 10 dice games. Games that include dice in the game, that are an integral part of the game. It doesn't necessarily have to be only dice, but it has to have dice as an integral part of the game. And so I did not include games that use like dice-based combat, games like Root or Mansions of Madness that I enjoy. I also didn't include Wingspan, which use dice only as a food source. Also, no roll and move games where you roll dice and that will determine how far you move around the board. So let's get started with number 10, and that is Super Skill Pinball 4K. It is a roll and write game based around a pinball, where you have 4 different pinball cabinets that it comes with, play with, and so you take your pen, you take your ball, and you roll dice, and the dice will determine where you can move on your pinball board, and you're going up and down with your bumper. You hit the bumpers on the bottom that can shoot back up to the top, and then you kind of move down, and the dice will determine where you can hit in specific zones of the cabinet. And so that's pretty interesting idea, and you score different points for different things. And there's a bunch of different like mini games in here in each one that has its own unique mini games and objectives to it. So that's pretty interesting, the Super Skill Pinball 4K. Number 9 is another roll and write that I've talked about before, and that is On Tour, where you have a map of US or Europe, and you're rolling dice and flipping over cards, and that will determine which region and which numbers you write in those regions, and you are filling out a tour route in numerical order. You're going to go in ascending order for numbers, trying to go and build the longest tour route you can. And it plays solo. You can also play it with up to 8 in the box. It can also be played virtually with as many people as you want. And that's On Tour. Number 8 is a Reiner Knizia game, and that is Age of War, where you have dice on your turn. You're rolling dice, and they will have different faces. Some will have like archery and infantry and cavalry, and there'll be cards that will require certain things to conquer, and so you're just trying to conquer as many different regions and areas as you can in this Japanese style middle war game. It's really a luck based. It's also push your luck based, trying to determine if you want to on your turn go for something that's really worth a lot of points, that's going to be really hard to get, or if you want to go for something that's really easy to get and not worth as many points. And there's also, you can also steal your opponent's things. You can go for things that your opponents have conquered if they don't have the complete set. So that's an interesting. I'm not very good at this game, so I roll pretty terribly when I play this, but it's an interesting game if you don't really care about like heavy strategy and just want to play something that's quick and easy and doesn't take a lot of heavy strategy. This is one to go for sure. Age of War. Number 7 is Machi Koro, where you play as a mayor of a Japanese town, trying to build up that town, building up different landmarks and different places in the town. And how the dice work is on your turn, you will roll dice, and whatever you roll will activate certain buildings that will give you more currency, make you lose currency, and on your opponent, it will also activate some of your opponent's buildings, and sometimes you'll have to pay them currency, or they will gain currency from you for different things that they have, and you can buy more buildings if you get enough currency, and you win the game by being the first one to build up your 4 landmarks before your opponents do. And so that's Machi Koro. Number 6 is a small game called Tiny Epic Galaxies. It's a space-themed game where you have your rocket ships and you're rolling dice and you are building up your economy and your influence, as well as you are going to move your ships from your home base to different planets to activate different abilities from different planets. You can also orbit planets and work on you can land, or you can try and orbit a planet, and once you've fully orbited a planet, you get to claim that planet as your own, and that will give you points based on how much that planet is worth. And so you can get to roll dice and determine what you want to do based on what you've rolled, and it's basically a race to, I think, like 13 or 14 points, something like that. Yeah. 6 points. Okay. So the first to 6 wins, and that is Tiny Epic Galaxies. Number 5 is another space-themed game similar to Machi Koro called Space Base. So Space Base, like I said, similar to Machi Koro, except for it's like set in space, and you're playing as a fleet commander and trying to control a fleet of ships. So you will have a board in front of you which will have 12 ships on it, 1 through 12, and you will also be able to acquire more ships to have better ships, so that you'll roll dice like Machi Koro, and that will affect like which ships you get to activate, and then your opponent will have orbiting ships that will be around space, and those will activate once certain dice are rolled as well. And you'll build up your currency, build up your economy level to purchase better ships, and you play to 40 points. That's how you win. Is first to 40 points wins. And the interesting thing about this one is when you buy a ship, you want to be careful what you're buying, because you don't get change back. You have to spend all your money to buy a specific ship. So if I wanted to buy a ship that costs 30 credits and I had 40 credits, I have to pay all 40 credits to buy that ship, and I don't, and my credits go down to 0. The catch is you have an income level that at the end of your turn, if your credits dip below your income level, you can boost your credits up to your income level again. Like say I had 10 income, I would go at the end of my turn, I would go from 0 back up to 10 if I had less than 10. And that's Space Base. Number 4 is an exception to my dice-based combat rule, and that is a family-style, fun dice-chucking game called King of Tokyo, where you have a monster and you are battling to become the biggest, baddest, most prestigious monster in all of Tokyo. So, on your turn, you will roll dice, decide which ones you want to keep, and re-roll the rest, and you get to roll 3 times, and you are trying to conquer Tokyo and either defeat all the other monsters, get all the other players' monsters to 0 health, or you want to get to 20 points as quickly as possible. It is a quick, fun, exciting game that's great for families, new gamers, And anyone that just wants a quick 20-minute experience that doesn't take a lot of thinking, the King of Tokyo is definitely your answer for sure. Number 3 is another game I talked about on this channel before, and That's Pretty Clever, Ganz Clever. It was a German game, roll and write game, kind of like Yahtzee, where you are rolling different colored dice, and you are choosing what you want. You'll have a sheet in front of you, and you will write on that sheet, crossing out different things and writing on it based on which die you took, which color die and which number. And you are trying to get as many points by filling out different spaces on your sheet. And with this one, you have to be careful what you not only what you take, but what you don't take. But because what you don't take, your opponents have a chance to steal the dice. So unlike with games like Yahtzee, where you're waiting around for your turn to happen, you're paying attention to what your opponent's doing, and what they're not doing is because what dice they don't use, you have a chance to use for yourself. And so that's an interesting idea that they implemented with this game versus older roll and writes of the past. That is Ganz Clever. Number 2 is a floodgate game, a very pretty looking one called Sagrada. It is a dice drafting stained glass game where you have these dual player boards, and you take these different sheets that will, like objective sheets, and you're popping it in here, and this will tell you where you can place your dice, what colors and what numbers can be placed in your board. And so what you're doing is you're taking turns going around, taking rolled dice from the center and putting them into your stained glass display, and you will have objectives that you need to follow, and certain objectives will give you different points. Like you want to have, like, some objectives will give you points for blue dice you have, or number 5 dice you have, or how many you've completed in your display. And you'll have a certain number of rounds you'll play, and then you'll calculate the points. Whoever has the most points will win. The trick for this one is you have to start out at the edge and kind of work your way throughout accordingly to where you started at. And you can't have 2 of the same number or color orthogonically attached to each other. So you have to be careful what you place there, because you could be potentially trapping yourself from playing another die right next to it, because you can't have 2 of the same number or color orthogonically attached. So that's an interesting thing. It's a really nice game, a really pretty game. It's definitely worth checking out if you want something that's beautiful and thinky, but not very complex, and also family friendly. Sagrada is definitely worth checking out. Number 2. And number 1 is a Euro game. It is Grand Austria Hotel. Grand Austria Hotel, you have a cafe that also doubles as a hotel. And how the dice work in this game is you are rolling dice to determine what actions can be taken. And so each number is associated to a different action. And how much of that action you can perform is based on the number of dice that you got of that number, that you rolled of that number. So for example, say you'll want to take like strudel or cake for your guess, which is number 1, but you only rolled 2 of those, so that means you can only take 1 strudel and 1 cake, versus like emperor track, which you rolled 4 of, so you can choose to either take those 2 strudel cake that you wanted, or you can advance on the emperor track 4. So you have to decide, like, did I roll enough of this number to justify taking this action? Or do I pass to my opponent, hoping to re-roll later or to do better next time? But you have to be careful when you take actions, when you pass, because when you pass, when it finally comes back to you on your turn, you're going to have significantly less dice to roll to do the things you want to do. So you'll have a bunch of different things you need to do, but you won't have enough dice to do those things. So you have to really determine what you can do and what you can't do in the amount of rounds and the amount of time you have, because time is limited in this game. So you just have to maximize the amount of points you can get with the things you can do in this game. And it's interesting because you want to do so much, but you can't do it all. So that's so you can really stress yourself out, burn yourself out overthinking in this game. But it's a great one if you have 90 minutes to kill and want to have a game that's involves dice, but it's a bit thinkier. Grand Austria Hotel is a great choice. So those are my top 10 dice games. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful for you. Drop a comment below telling me what your favorite dice game is. Thank you for watching and have a great day.